The best way for me to describe basic training is chaos. The drill sergeant was constantly barking out orders, and all the soldiers running around in a state of confusion. The first thing I thought to myself was, what in the hell did I get myself into? But this is what I wanted to do, join the army and travel the world. But what you didn't want to do was cause any unwanted attention yourself. And unfortunately for me, by having the last name of Nixon, and it was 2 to 3 years after President Nixon resigned, the drill sergeants always sought me out because of my last name. Another way that I drew unwanted attention because I had a speech issue, I would pronounce words that start off DR as GR. So instead of saying yes, drill sergeant, I would say yes, grill sergeant. And the drill sergeant wasn't amused by that. So they were like, what did you say to me? And I say, grill sergeant. And they would say, do I look like I cook hot dogs and hamburgers to you? Get out and knock out some push-ups. So this went on for weeks, this back and forth thing where I couldn't pronounce the word drill. And they thought I was just trying to be a funny guy. And so every time I had to do push-ups, and they got to the point where I said, I can't continue to do this. So what I would do at night, after all the soldiers go to bed, I was going to the latrine. That's another word for bathroom. And I would stand in front of the mirror and just form my mouth and just kept practicing just saying the word drill, 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 until I was able to master it and where I wouldn't get in trouble for saying grill sergeant anymore. The drill sergeants also picked on me or tried to get in my head one day on the rifle range. So I'm down in the foxhole and the drill sergeant comes up to me and speak to me, and I just turn my head to the side to listen to what he was saying. While you on the rifle range, you never point your weapon any other way other than just downrange. And so I did not point my weapon any place other than downrange, but the drill sergeant accused me of pointing the weapon at him and that I was trying to kill him. So he, barked at me, and then he says, get out of the foxhole, and I need you to go stand in front of the tree and recite, I will not shoot the drill sergeant. So of course I complied and started reciting, I would not shoot the drill sergeant, I would not shoot the drill sergeant. And after a while, I realized how funny this looked. And so I kind of had a smirk on my face as I was reciting it. He saw it, came to me and said, oh, so now you think it's funny that you want to shoot the drill sergeant. I want you to go get your mess kit. The mess kit was this metal object that if you unfolded it, it became like a plate. But inside the mess kit, you had a spoon, fork, and knife. So he said, take your spoon out and start digging a 6x6 grave for me. So of course I comply with that too. So I'm down there, I'm starting to dig this so-called grave, and shortly he's like, it wasn't fazing me, or I wasn't getting upset by it, and he just told me to stop. Another issue I had in basic training was a guy named Joseph Young. On the first 2 slides, you will see that he is the person that's standing directly in front of me. Joseph Young was from Atlanta, and the soldiers would stand around at times, and we would talk about where we was from and our experiences. Most of the guys were from the urban environment. I was from the country. I used to milk cows when I was growing up. We had chickens when I was growing up. And I think Joseph Young saw that as me being some kind of soft guy. So he wanted to fight me. Of course, I didn't want to fight him because I didn't want to get in trouble. But it came to one day where I had no other option but to fight him. So it would be nice to say that this story ended where I'll tell you I kicked his butt, but that's not what happened. But what did happen was that I held my own to where it kind of looked like a win, because he was the one portraying himself as being such a bad guy. And for me to hold my own against him, it kind of minimized how tough he really was. So after that, the rest of the soldiers had more respect for me. And at that point, the drill sergeants no longer target me.
In basic training, everything is based on a reward system. For example, in the dining facility, initially you're only allowed to drink water or milk. And so you had to do something exceptional in order to have access to the soda fountain. This pass indicated that I scored a 424 out of 500 on our physical fitness test, and so I was allowed to use a soda machine. This pass indicated that I was allowed to leave the base and go downtown if I chose to. I did not choose to go downtown because the downtown area was notorious for having prostitutes and for people targeting the soldiers and ripping them off.
Once I arrived in Germany, I was sent to a personnel center for about 3 days for in processing and to be assigned to a unit. Once that unit was identified, I was provided a train ticket to get there. I was placed on a train with no other soldiers or Americans. Being from rural North Carolina, I've never ridden a train before. After every stop, the conductor would come and check my ticket and say something to me in German, which I didn't understand. And with every stop, he would come to me, and as we went through every stop, his tone became a little more sterner. And like I said, I didn't understand, but I started getting nervous because if you know German language or have heard German language versus like French, Spanish, or Italian, it sounds a little harsher. So like I said, I got nervous. I was almost in tears because I didn't know what the guy was telling me. But I was saved by a young German that translated to me that what he was saying was that I need to get off the train at a certain exit. While this was an unpleasant experience, after attending a week-long German culture and language class, I used this knowledge to learn how to read train schedules and do some other basic stuff like ask directions and stuff. Riding the trains and hanging out at the train stations became one of my favorite pastimes while I was stationed in Germany. I vividly remember receiving my assignment to nuclear weapons site and was anxious to get there. It was good to finally have a permanent location to lay my head and to receive letters from family and friends. The location was outside of a small town named Thum, which was spelled Thum, and it was very remote. I remember getting there at night, and the first thing I asked them was, well, where is our gym? They took me back out to the doors that I entered the building in, and into the darkness, they said, if you look real hard, you'll see a basketball goal. Next, I asked, well, where is our library? They took me to a room where there was a bookshelf about 5 feet high and 3 feet wide, and they said, this is the library. This building consisted of the barracks, laundry room, supply room, administrative offices, a secure room where classified material was stored, a dining hall, a pool room, and a mail room. Due to our remoteness, military doctors, dentists, PX, and commissary facilities was approximately 50 miles away in the Netherlands, and the closest military hospital was approximately 150 miles away in Belgium. It would take a while for me to start work as a custodial agent, which is another word for security guard. The paperwork had to be completed requesting my top secret clearance, which took a few months. After receiving the clearance, you next had to pass a test. And so every day you had to go into the secure room and study until you passed the test. Once you passed the test, you had to recertify every 6 months. We worked 24-hour shifts, and for most of my tour, due to personnel shortages, I worked a 24-hour shift, was off for 24 hours, and then came back and worked another 24-hour shift. During times where we had the correct number of personnel, I would work a 24-hour shift, be off for 24 hours, report to work the following day, and be a standby guard, and would leave at the end of the regular business day. The duty of a custodial agent was to control access to the area surrounding the building that housed the nuclear weapons, and for also control who entered the building where the weapons were stored. Later, I became a senior custodial agent, which was a desk sergeant. The desk sergeant supervised the guards on duty, distributed ammo and flak jackets to the Americans that was going inside the control area. And also, the desk sergeant made sure that anybody who was going inside the control area had the proper credentials, which means you was on some security roster that gave you access, that allow you access inside the area. Later, I was given additional responsibility as a encoder, decoder of emergency action messages. If you saw the movie Crimson Tide with Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman, the dilemma in that movie was that they had received a fragmented emergency action message, and they was disputing on whether they should launch the weapons because of that. So that's what we did, was we received the messages and we either encoded message, decoded messages, and make sure of the validity of the message. The object of our being at that location was to stay vigilant to prevent the nuclear weapons from getting into the hands of foreign agents and terrorists. We constantly trained our Belgian counterparts on quick reactionary tactics as well as emergency destruction for our site. In the event that our site was overrun, we would have been instructed to destroy the site, which would have destroyed us as well. As I had previously mentioned, we worked daily with the Belgian Air Force, and their guardhouse was approximately 50 yards from our guardhouse. So at the end of a normal work day, sometimes we would go to the Belgian guardhouse to buy some snacks and converse with them. It gave them opportunity to practice their English, and also sometimes they took the time to try to teach us some French words. I became friends with one Belgian whose name was Paul, who was originally from Congo, which was a country that was colonized by Belgium. On numerous occasions, I visited him and his family in Belgium, and on occasions, I would spend the weekends with them. Also, due to the closeness of our location to the Netherlands, I also became friends with people there as well. Due to the lack of American facilities, if you wanted to move out of the barracks, in most cases, you would be renting from a German. The first location I rented, I had a German landlady. She treated me like family and would always invite me to dinner with her family, which I frequently accepted. If you want to make a phone call back to the United States, you had to go to the next town to go to the post office to make the call. So there was times I'm walking down this country road to go to the next town to get to the post office, and a German farmer would stop on his tractor and offer me a ride. Also, sometimes if you went to the pubs there, they would offer to buy you beer. For entertainment, we had a pool table, an outside basketball goal, and a volleyball court. Our supply room doubled as a movie room in the evenings. To watch a movie, we had one of those big projectors and a canister that held the movie, so someone always would have to thread the movie before it was showtime. On the weekends, they would provide us with 2 movies to watch. During the latter part of my tour, the movies were replaced with VCR tapes, which contained American TV shows and taped sporting events. Due to our remoteness, we didn't have access to the American Forces Network TV, which was referred to as AFN, that most soldiers had available to them in most overseas locations. Our location depended on atmospheric conditions. Sometimes we could have access to AFN radio. So to put this in perspective, from February of 1976 to December 1979, I had no access to any live American sporting events nor TV. The only time I saw the Super Bowl was I took leave one time and stayed on the Air Force base in order to see the Super Bowl. When we did have access to American Forces Radio, one of my favorite pastimes on Sundays was listening to Casey Kasem's American Top 40. We were able to see some American programs due to our location by watching the Netherlands or the Belgium stations, and every now and then they would show some American programs, but they came with subtitles. Another favorite pastime was catching the train to Cologne and just walking around the area of the Cologne Cathedral. After my initial encounter of riding a train, I became comfortable riding trains where I would just hop on the train and just go to sleep before getting to my destination. I arrived in Germany at the age of 18, and I left at the age of 22. It was always have a special part in my heart for the country and for the people. This is where I feel like I grew up, being over 4,000 miles from home and only going home one time during that time frame.
This handsome young fella was my supervisor, Sergeant Robert Lewis's son. We stayed in the same apartment house. He lived on the second floor, and I lived on the third floor. So on occasion, little Robbie would come up, and we would get on the bed and wrestle or pretend to be playing football. As I mentioned earlier, I became friends with this one Belgian named Paul. He originally from the Belgian Congo, and so he was in the Belgian Air Force. And if you can see, he's in the white jacket right above my head. Below with me is his daughter, Laura. She was like my little girlfriend, and so when I would spend weekends with them, she used to always hang out with me because she's like playing with me. After completing my initial 4 year enlistment in the infantry, I was undecided on if I would make a career in the Army. But what I did know was that I was ill prepared to leave the military with the limited civilian opportunities the infantry skill set provided. So I decided to independently study for the ASVAB test to assess what career options would be available when I reenlisted. After retaking the test, I was informed that I could practically reenlist for any career field I wanted. I narrowed my choices to the medical and computer fields. Initially, I was leaning toward the medical field, but the deciding factor was how soon I could get a class date for school. This I ended up choosing to become a computer machine operator. The 14th Data Processing Unit was a mobile computer unit out of Fort Bragg. We was designed to pick up and go anywhere in the world. Our computers was in what you consider trailers. One trailer we would have the computer system, a large printer, and a card reader. Another trailer would have our tape drives and our disk drives. And then a third trailer would have our tape library. Unlike Fort Bragg, this computer system was what is considered a fixed site, which means the computers was locked down into a building and was not subject to be deployed all over the world. ETA-1 district was a district that was frequented by all soldiers. It was commonly an area where we went to shop for clothing and also for the nightclubs. This tree represents the area which was considered the Korean axe murder incident, which two U.S. Army officers was killed by North Korean soldiers on August 18, 1976, in a joint secure area in the DMZ. The U.S. Army officers had been part of a working party to cut down a poplar tree in that area. 3 days later, American and South Korean forces launched Operation Paul Bunyan, an operation that cut down the tree with a show of force to intimidate North Korea into backing down, which occurred. North Korea then accepted responsibility for the earlier killings. The incident is also known alternately as the Hatchet Incident, the Poplar Tree Incident, and the Tree Trimming Incident.
Verona, Italy. This was a special assignment, whereas I worked in a secret mountain with the Italian military. The uniqueness of this assignment was that there was only 100 American military at this location, which was a mixture of the Marines, Army, Navy, and Air Force. We were located 40 miles from the nearest American military base, which was an Army base in Vicenza. Vicenza is where we went for medical, dental, hospital care, as well as accessing the PX commissary and movie theater. Working with the Italians, we were able to do things that were customary for them, such as being able to drink wine during our lunch and dinner meals, since we ate our meals in their dining facility. Also, during the months of July and August, the Italians deemed it too hot to work since there was a rarity to have air conditioner systems over there. We would get off of work at noon every day. Once we was off, we accessed what was called this Campo Sportivo, which is another name for sports grounds, where you could play tennis, swim, eat, or you had the option to just go home. Another perk was that we had the opportunity to get a week of skiing in the Italian Alps without having to take leave. Italy was a great country for good food, sights, and history.
West Star was built between 1960 and 1966 in the case of war with the Warsaw Pact countries. West Star could support up to 500 people for 15 days without the need of external supplies. After being at Vint Hill Farms for 2 months, I was approached by my commander to take on a job that wasn't part of the computer field and became the most challenging job of my career. The job was that of a ComSat custodian. ComSat is short for Communication Security. The account was no longer in good standing, and someone was needed to correct the deficiencies. As the ComSat custodian, I was responsible for managing the account of over 350 line items of classified equipment, materials, and information in accordance with DoD ComSat policies. The primary focus of the position was to ensure that all items were accounted for by documentation to indicate whether the items were either on hand, distributed, or destroyed. In 6 months, I returned the account to good standing and was also able to streamline some processes to minimize the security risk of handling these items as well as save the government money.
At Information Systems Command, Fort Belvoir, I was a non-commissioned officer in charge of the Systems Operations Division's data processing facility, which was a three-shift, 24-hour, 7 days a week operation. I managed and evaluated the job performance of 14 military and 6 civilian personnel and the daily operations of the IBM 4381 mainframe computer system valued over $3 million, as well as performing quality assurance for customer service. Also was the platoon sergeant of 25 soldiers, which means being responsible for their health, welfare, morale, training, and professional development. While serving this position, I established a physical fitness program, which resulted in the average physical training scores improving by a 39-point average for the platoon. Due to Northern Virginia being a high cost of living area, I established a policy that all new personnel must receive financial counseling upon their arrival. To enhance my IT personnel skill set, I was able to coordinate with the United States Marine Computer Science School in Quantico, Virginia to fill any of their courses' vacant seats free of charge. I was also responsible for coaching one subordinate to win the brigade's NCO of the Year competition, 3 subordinates to win the brigade's NCO of the Year Soldier of the Quarter competition, and in my free time coach our unit softball, bowling, and cross country teams, as well as the Fort Belvoir's Pee Wee basketball team.
In the military, if you want to get promoted, you need to try to find some things that are going to separate you from your peers. This is one of the things I did was I participated in the Army 10-mile run. The second most challenging job I had was when I was selected as the one person in my career field to work at the Department of the Army's Total Personnel Command in Alexandria, Virginia, as the assignment manager slash professional development NCO for the career field 74, which was information systems. This position allowed me to positively affect the careers of over 3,000 soldiers, as well as provide sound advice on retention, recruitment, promotions, schooling, and the personnel strength of my career field worldwide. I was also responsible for assigning the right person to the right position in all worldwide positions. My expertise was highlighted by me being interviewed by the Army Times, which is a bi-monthly newspaper with worldwide circulation of over 90,000, serving active reserve, National Guard, and retired U.S. Army personnel and their families. In order to be promoted to the top 3 enlisted ranks, you must submit your promotion packet to the review board. There are no in-person interviews. This packet should include your last 5 performance evaluations, all award and decorations, any civilian and military courses degrees, and this Department of the Army photo, better referred to as the DA photo. You could have exceeded expectations on your performance evaluations and have exceeded in all other areas, but if you present a bad photo, more likely than not, you will be passed over for promotion. All items on the sleeve must be placed according to Army regulations. The review board will use magnifying glasses to ensure that they are properly placed. They will also check to see if you are wearing the correct ribbons and decorations. Lastly, and most important, you must properly fit your uniform. If you have lost or gained weight, you have been best served to have gotten your uniform altered or have bought a new one. The reason why I'm showing this page of all the ranks is because all these ranks made it possible for me to make a career out of the military. Later on, you'll see where I acknowledge certain supervisors and certain mentors. But it's not just those people who made my career, it was the people in the ranks that was below me. Because if they did not believe in my leadership, then I would not have been successful in what I did. So my hats go off to all ranks, but particularly those who served under me because they believed in me in order for me to be successful. My first supervisor was Sergeant Lewis. Before I talk about the leader, Sergeant Lewis, I want to talk about the man, Sergeant Lewis. The way I would describe him as a man is a Renaissance man. He knew a lot about a lot of different subjects. He impressed me because he was the first black man I ever saw that actually had real hobbies that didn't involve chasing women or drinking. I know that he used to collect stamps and he might have collected some other things, but I do remember him collecting stamps. So that made quite an impression on me as far as him as a different type of black man. Another thing he would do is you play him in poodle, well, he's gonna talk you to death. He's gonna talk you out of the game. He's gonna talk junk to you while you're playing. But let's move on to the leader, Sergeant Lewis. Now, I admire him because he took a raw soldier, somewhat undisciplined, and kind of maintained his composure and kind of like sit back and watch the paint dry or the process of you painting a picture and see the whole thing play out. So eventually, I became less of an undisciplined soldier and became more of a soldier and took up more responsibilities. And it was all because of his leadership. So I appreciate you, Sergeant Lewis, because of this. Sergeant Valley was the first supervisor I had in the data processing field. She taught me that there's different ways that you can lead. You didn't necessarily have to yell at people to get results. You can talk to them in a civilized manner, which is the way her approach to leadership was. And so I had a lot of respect for her because of her different style of leadership. Captain Bingham, the best commander I had in my 23 years of service. She was small in stature, but she was one tough lady. She would run us all day, but she was always there and always there when we had to do some work, and she was always there to give you encouragement. The greatest compliment I ever got from her was when she suggested that I meet her cousin, and knowing how she was, I'm like, no, I cannot do that because I didn't want for her to come after me if I did wrong about her cousin. But it's no surprise to me that she went on to become a three-star general. Major Fawn, he was another one of my great mentors. He saw something in me that I didn't even see in myself, so he put me in a position over someone that had more rank than me because he thought that I was the better person for the job. Another thing that Major Farm would always do is during the holidays, the single people in the unit that worked for him, he would invite you over the house for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Another great thing that he did that a lot of the leaders would not do was since we was in Korea during the 88 Seoul Olympics, he called everybody together and says, who is not going to the Olympics? And if you raise your hand and say you wasn't going, he asked you why not. He said there's no reason why you should not at least make one event. So that meant a lot to me that he looked out for our soldiers in that way where he would have you at his house for a holiday since you was away from home, and that he wanted everybody to take the opportunity to go to the Olympics. General Senzeki, I've served under him in Italy when he was a one-star general. but it's not surprised me that he went on to become the Army Chief of Staff, which is a 4-star general. The best way for me to describe him is that he was a soldier's general. Him and his wife Patty, they got involved in the community. And one example was we put on a Nintendo tournament for the little kids. And it was at 8 o'clock on a Saturday morning. Him and Patty both showed up to support the effort that we was putting on. He got my respect and admiration because he had lost half his foot in the Vietnam War. Didn't have to take a PT test, but when we took PT tests, he would come out there and outrun half the people out there.